now that we have all the frets recrowned, they just need to be polished back up. Since we've been dragging rough files across them, they're not smooth and slick, and you want a fine polish like the chrome on a 57 Chevy. You want it to gleam, you want it to be smooth, and this makes for a very slippery, slick feel when you play, which is what you want. You want it to, almost be, you don't want anything that's going to grab or stop you from doing bends. Even you jazz guys who don't bend. It's nice to have them as smooth as possible. It just makes for a much more comfortable and enjoyable playing surface. And so to do that, in this particular case, I'm going to use several different grades of wet dry sandpaper. And again, there's a number of ways to do this. You could start down, as low as maybe 300 or 400 grit. Since the files I'm using are about the 320-ish, or maybe a little bit lower, but I tend to just use a little bit more elbow grease and start with a little finer grit, since they're in pretty good shape. And so in this case, I'm starting with some 600, and then I'm going to gradually move up to 3,000, and then I will polish them out after that. There are some Dremel bits and tools that you can use to do this, and they work great. But for this particular situation, I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way and just use elbow grease and sandpaper. As always, the sandpaper fills up pretty quickly, so you want to move it around and keep almost using a different spot for every fret, because they do load up rather quickly. And I have a couple pieces ready to go of each one. Should be enough. And again, this is where things, get kind of dirty, because there's a lot of shavings that happen. And so keep a clean rag around. I try to keep the surface as clean as possible. It just makes for a better job, in my opinion. Once again, just my opinion. So, we'll start at the last fret and we'll work our way all the way up to the first. And I'm using my hand to just steady the guitar so that it doesn't wiggle around too much, but I'm not pressing down, I'm just holding it steady. And I'm not pressing very hard with this hand either, again. Just letting the sandpaper do the work. And I am trying to get the whole thing. It's one of the things I like about paper over the Dremel tools. The Dremel tools are great for doing the tops, but they are harder to do the whole fret. And the whole fret's what we're trying to work on, so there you go. So this is somewhat boring and monotonous, but it makes a huge difference. This is not where you want to skip, and you'll find little imperfections, little nicks and stuff in the fret. Will disappear pretty quickly. Just take your time. Again, this is one of those places where usually if you find that there's a rough spot or a nick or a ding that you don't actually see, you can usually feel it. And if you're paying attention to what your fingers are telling you, you can usually find those and smooth them on out. And this goes relatively quickly. You just have to kind of take your time. Count sheep if you have to. Write a song in your head. And it is a good time to, get some tunes going. Get that smooth jazz going. And just relax and make sure you get every one of the frets polished up nicely. Makes a huge difference at the end of the road. So this is not the time to skip steps, although many people are prone to do that. This is just one of the things you sort of have to just grind it out. And while it isn't the most fun, it makes a big difference at the end result. And make sure you keep moving that paper around. Don't use the same spot over and over and over. And don't be scared to throw the piece away. Start with a fresh one. The higher grits do fill up quicker, clog up I should say, faster. And these ones just kind of hold up pretty good. Yes, the monotony is real. So if you had to pay to have this done, and you've gotten this far, maybe it's starting to make sense of why it's expensive. Because it's a lot of work. It takes time. And while not difficult, it's time consuming. And there aren't really good ways of cutting some of the corners on some of the steps. You just have to grind it out. And I know people are always shocked when I tell them about what it would cost to do something like this, and they just don't know what it takes to do it, or they would not be so surprised that it's expensive. So again, just take your time. You can feel when it is smoothed out to as much as the paper is going to give you. It just becomes a whole lot easier. There's nothing gripping or grabbing at it. The paper, that is. And I will move around, use my finger, use my thumb, just to mix it up. And also, you know, my hands do cramp up sometimes. You do a couple of these in the morning, and after a few, you know, I definitely feel it. And but you young guys will be fine. No problem. All right, so step one finished, and then it's basically move up to the next grit and repeat. Again, I like to keep things clean, so I'm just going to wipe off the extra dust and dirt here. next habit. Oops. So if anything sort of got in the way, you don't want to be rubbing dirt or dust into this. You want to, you want to keep that surface as clean as possible. So now I'm going to bump up to a finer grit, and I'm going to do it all again. I know, shocker. And you can definitely see the shine level start coming up a little bit better as you go through the grits. End result, we want a nice mirror-like shine. Nice and buttery smooth, glassy. Oops. This is also where it really pays to have the fingerboard covered, because you can just work without worrying that you're going to damage the fingerboard, which is important, especially if it's not your guitar. And these finer grits do wear out quicker, so you got to keep an eye on it, and don't be afraid to throw some away and move on to the next piece. It's okay. Oh, oops. Sorry. Okay, earthquake. We are in California, by the way. Going lefty on you. All right. Again, just wiping everything down again, just keeping it clean. Probably don't have to do this as much as I do. It's just become a habit for me to try and keep everything clean. Alright, so now we're stepping up to really fine. And we're going to do it all again. Which is just the nature of the beast. So take your time, do it right. Also, you know, if you have the luxury of having more than one guitar, or you don't need the guitar that you're working on that moment, that day, to have something to play, you know, it's okay to walk away. Go have a beer. Go do something else. Come back in the morning with fresh eyes and fresh fingers. But don't rush it, and don't skip. I really don't want to skip the polishing steps, because this is what's going to make a big difference. I mean, once you get them, why go to all the work of getting them all nice and level? And, you know, while polishing does make them pretty, it's the playability that's the huge difference. And if you do it right, take your time, you'll notice it in the end. Like with most things, you know, it's okay. So like I said, if you need to take a break, take a break. You know, walk away. You know, come back in the morning with fresh eyes, or come back a couple days later. Do that rather than skip ahead, or don't do it. You know, even sometimes skipping just one of the grits of paper, just, you know, not worth it in my opinion. And that is just what it is, just my opinion. And those are getting really nice and slick. One is pretty much toast. It helps to use the right side. Flipped on me. And some people will say, hey, you don't have to do that. So you don't have to go through so many steps with the paper. Just run your Dremel tool across the tops and it'll be fine. And for some people, like I said, is okay. I like to go through the steps and get them as good as I can. Some really fine grit. This last stage I'm doing right here is 3000 grit. And, which might be a bit much, you know. 1,000, 2,000 might be enough. I kind of have found that this last step really gives a nice polish. So I keep doing it. And could just be habit. But I like the final product, so I've stuck with it. And I'm just running back through them a little bit here, giving everybody one last kiss. I am pressing quite a bit harder doing this than I do when I'm actually leveling. It's good to get in there, and especially with the fine grit. It's you're not leveling, so it doesn't matter if the neck flexes a little bit under the weight of me pushing, and it gets in and gets that job done really nicely. But I'm not crazy. It's not a crazy amount of pressure, but it is firm. And there you go. Oh, those look nice. Alright, so now, continuing with the theme of being clean, I'm gonna use a little bit of this mineral spirits. And I'm just gonna clean everything off a little bit here. You can see it's dirty. And I'm going to let that dry for just a second or two, or evaporate, however you want to look at it. Okay, how are we doing? Alright, and now we're going to polish. Yay. So, I personally like to use the mothers, and there's lots of stuff out there. Most of them work really good. I've been using mothers for a very long time. I like the way it works, and one of these things lasts a long time, so I just keep buying the same stuff over and over again. And once more, we're just going to hit every fret with some polish. And then they just glisten nice and clean. And that's what you want. Just butter. And it doesn't take much. They've already been hit with that fine grit sandpaper, so this is just the icing on the proverbial cake, I suppose. But it really just makes them shine, which is a nice look, but it also gives a really great, glassy, smooth feeling. And that's what you want. That's what I want, anyway. You might agree. You might not agree. I don't know. It's treated me right. So I keep doing it. And yes, it's a bit monotonous. And repetitive, but it's worth it. And like I said, don't be scared to take a break in between. I do it all the time. I'll get partway through and I'll stop for lunch or something and just give my hands a break, give my head a break, give my eyes a break, and answer those phone calls maybe that came in, and look at those emails that I might have to answer or something like that, and then come back and finish polishing or sanding or whatever it was, whatever point I was at when I left off. Important to keep moving that rag around, though. You don't want to rub that dirty spot over and over, and it does leave a pretty good smudge. And this particular guitar does have 24 frets, so there's a couple extras. As per normal, the 21 or 22 that I normally work on, but there are a lot of guys out there that like the 24 frets. 2 full octaves. Can't really complain about that, I suppose. I tend not to play quite that high up on the neck very often, so I don't really need it, but I can understand the people that do. And hey, if you only use them once in a while, it's nice to have them there. And I am old enough to remember when some of the companies started putting some extra frets up there in the shred heyday. That was a thing for a quick minute. Doesn't seem to have lasted very long. I don't think they made too many of those guitars, but it was cool. More is better was the idea, I think. And I'm sure to somebody out there it was like the cat's pajamas. Sometimes like that one there, I'll do kind of 2 at the same time since they're close together there. Not always, usually just 1 at a time, but once in a while I'll sneak in 2.
Nationwide. Blown to 89. You and yours, and me and mine. Double nickels on a dime. Dump the clutch. Let's ride in my 65.
So this is how it's done, by me anyway. And these frets will now be basically better than probably new. Nice and level, ready to go. And this guitar will get a setup on it, and hopefully it will make the owner happy for years to come. And shouldn't need any fretwork for a while, that's for sure. Hopefully, anyway. And pretty much kind of gives it that boost. Even an inexpensive guitar with some nice level frets makes it play so much better, and really elevates the playability and feel of a guitar. When especially nice when you can set it up the way you like and not just sort of take as much as what the guitar will give you, because that happens a lot. All right, well, that is how I level frets on a regular basis here at Orbiter Guitars. I hope that was helpful. Don't be scared. It's not that tough. Start on a cheapie. That's the one thing I would definitely recommend to anybody. You probably got a friend that has something sitting in the closet that they don't really want. You could probably talk it out of them pretty quickly and easily. Lots of cheap guitars out there. And the more kind of beat up they are and the more fretwork they need, the better experience you'll gain by doing it. So get some decent tools. I mean, like you said, like I showed you here, you don't need much. And find what works for you. This works for me. And maybe it'll work for you too. I don't know. All right. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.